Hey there, retro gamers. Today on Smashing Bricks, we join the Galactic Federation police in the year 20X5 in Metroid for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Hey, welcome back to Smashing Bricks, a retro gaming podcast. My name is Eddie Inzauto, and I'm here once again with the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Gnagnarelli. How you doing, Ant?
What up, what up, what up? What's going on, Eddie? Another game, another day.
Yeah, we are back in the early days of the Nintendo Entertainment System for this episode 7 of Smashing Bricks. We are diving into the OG, the original Metroid.
Back from 86?
1986.
Ooh, that was a good
if
year.
I'm not mistaken.
That was my year, yeah.
Yeah, you were born in Metroid Land, out in the Galactic Federation as part of the Space Hunters.
Yeah,
A
destined to be a
small
space
but
hunter.
mighty Anthony Gnagnarelli was birthed.
Truer words were never spoken.
So yeah, this is Metroid for the Nintendo, which is a big deal.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, absolutely.
Spawned an everlasting franchise, as a lot of these early Nintendo games happened to do. And this was one of the earlier ones after like Mario and Donkey Kong. So Metroid, I guess we could quickly just talk about, how it came about.
Okay, yeah, cool.
So it was 1986. Nintendo was still pretty new. The NES was still pretty new. It was still super early, and Nintendo at this time was trying a lot of different things with the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was new. They had to try different ideas, see what stuck. So they had kind of hit more of the kid friendly games. They did a lot of that, a lot
A
of
lot
like
of safe
family
bets.
oriented stuff. Yeah. And they wanted to try something that was a little more adult, right? So uh, they had this guy, Satoru Okada, who had worked on a couple games. He'd worked on Wild Gunman, he worked on Duck Hunt and Hogan's Alley and Balloon Fight and Wrecking Crew, Stack Up, Gyromite, a lot of these early NES games that you find in some of these collections, like these historical, oh, remember this game? Remember this game for the robotic operating buddy? That was so cool back in the original days of Nintendo. But they were like very simple, those early games. A lot of them were like kind of lame in a way. Like they were not very adventurous. And then he was positioned as the director of this game, Metroid, and it was to be adventurous. It was a grand adventure, and it actually sort of launched not just this franchise, but an entire genre, right? Like we know the Metroidvania genre,
Yeah,
which Castlevania picked up on it, even Zelda picked up on it. So Metroidvania really involves a map where you can go in a variety of directions, but you'll always hit a wall that will require you to have a certain item to progress forward, and then you have to backtrack and adventure in a different direction, maybe to find the things that you need that will unlock forward progress. And it's a lot of exploration, and this was meant to be an exploration based game.
it was right around the same time that those choose your own adventure books were so popular too.
Oh
That's what
yeah,
this game
those were
really felt
big.
like.
Those were big in my childhood for sure.
Yeah.
So Metroid actually came right after the original Legend of Zelda, which sort of incorporated some of these ideas. So actually maybe some of these ideas came from the legendary Miyamoto, but they were taken to the next level here in Metroid, as far as like really leaning into that unlocking of progress. And this one was directed by Satoru Okada, and it was produced by Gunpei Yokoi, who is famous for having developed the Game & Watch in the early Nintendo days, and he invented the Game Boy, and a lot of the other handhelds were really coming out of the minds of these two men, Yokoi and Okada. But this game was where they were working together, I believe, for maybe the first time. And it was a huge success because this game, it was considered to be great, through history, right? We've considered it to be a great game. Everyone in gaming kind of agrees that the Metroid series is awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the most popular cosplays. It's all over. When you go into Comic-Con, it stands the test of time. I remember not only this, but Super Metroid, Metroid for the GameCube. There were so many iterations across all of Nintendo's, handheld platforms. It's just something that just never gets old. It's something that almost kind of like in a Mega Man type of way, the way it evolved and into different weapons and different moves, and it's just it had a great birth, and it definitely stood the test of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So where'd they get the idea? Well, it was heavily influenced by Alien.
Oh yeah, I was
You
gonna
could say.
say, yeah. If you were gonna ask me that question, I was thinking that. I was thinking Sigourney Weaver, Alien. That was right around the same
Mm-hmm.
time. I gotta check the date on Alien, unless you pulled it up already.
1979 was Alien.
Right on.
And it was directed by Ridley Scott, and Ridley became the name of a character in the game. Um, and you mentioned Sigourney Weaver as like the hero of that. Well, originally, everything in video game land was very male centric, as in like the whole world, right? But at one point during development, they just thought, oh, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this person turned out to actually be a woman?
Mm.
I guess maybe from, the female hero, the heroine of that. And so they did it, and they were like, you know what, let's do it. And we find that out at the end of the game, which, if you're listening to this now
Spoiler alert.
in 2022 for this 1986 game, and you didn't know that Samus was a woman, that's impressive. You have impressively avoided information that is now common knowledge. But at the time, it was 100% meant to be a shock, a trick. Even in the instruction manual, they said Samus Aran, he, him. There's a whole story in the beginning of the instruction manual. Oh yeah, he is the greatest of all the space hunters and has successfully completed numerous missions. His entire body has been surgically strengthened with robotics. Even the pirates fear his spacesuit. His true form is shrouded in mystery. They left a little hint there.
Mm.
So the game was about a really dangerous force being unlocked, and that is the Metroids, these little creatures, because the space pirates who kind of threaten the Galactic Federation and like the
The
peace of
balance of
all
the
these
universe.
nations,
Yeah.
they've discovered these creatures and intend to use them for evil. And we send in the space hunters as the thwarters of evildoers, with Samus Aran
Tell me
being the
about
number
that
one.
helmet not looking like a Mach 1 Master Chief helmet too.
Yeah. Oh
Right.
yeah,
Or
man.
even like the
I
Doom Slayer, right?
honestly, I always thought Master Chief's helmet was like an homage to Samus Aran.
Yeah.
When I saw it, I was like, oh, it's just like a green Samus in a
Page
way.
8 is looking just like the Doom Slayer as well. Even the colors almost look like Ring Doom.
Yeah. What else? We have this game. It was a non-linear adventure game. They called it a very free working environment as a way to describe it, because they were
Mm.
kind of inventing it at the time. It had a very particular soundtrack.
Yeah, very, very simple
Yeah.
soundtrack for the most part. Very ominous.
Yep.
Almost sounded like you were going through those tunnels, like Sigourney Weaver was, just waiting for these aliens to just jump out at you, or swoop down, or crawl around and get you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the composer was Hirokazu Tanaka, and what he was trying to do, what he has said in like subsequent interviews, was he wanted to make a score for this game that made players feel like they were encountering a living organism, and he did his best to not have a distinction between what is traditionally perceived as music and what is perceived as sound effects. So there's nothing melodic in it. It's just a lot of ambiance in a way.
Almost alien in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly.
To the ear, yeah.
So this game, it came out on the Famicom in August 1986, and it hit North America in 1987.
So, Ed, for the listeners out there, the Famicom, I mean, was that the NES before it was called the NES, or?
That's the Japanese Nintendo. So the Famicom, well, the Famicom, that's actually interesting. This was released on the Famicom Disk System, which was an add-on to the original Famicom that had memory. It made for like bigger games. There's the same thing for Zelda, was released on the Disk System. But I'm not sure if this was the case, but there's a password system in Metroid. If you stop the game, you have to enter a password. I'm wondering if the Famicom Disk System didn't have the password and that was added just for the United States. It's possible. It was also released in 1986 on the PlayChoice 10. The PlayChoice 10 was an arcade machine that could have 10 games from the Nintendo Entertainment System on it. And that was in arcades, and the games could be swapped out. So this was available in the arcade. As crazy as that sounds, playing
I
Metroid
think there
in the
might have
arcade.
been one of those machines in my local Pizza Hut when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. So I remember there being a really cool machine that played a few different games. Shout out to Pizza Hut back in the day. Used to be able to select your own slice at the pizza bar.
All right. So what about re-releases of this game? So this game was available in 2002. There were two releases. There was Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance and Metroid Prime, a phenomenal advance for this series, which maybe we'll get to in a future episode. But these two games came out same year, and the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance worked really well together because Nintendo came out with the link cable. So they did a lot of these little sort of tie-ins that would get you to buy both games on the two different consoles. But using the link cable would unlock the original Metroid on the GameCube if you linked the two games. It's also unlocked in a later game, Metroid Zero Mission, which Metroid Zero Mission is actually in itself a reimagining of Metroid, the original.
Never played it.
Yeah, me either. Actually, we'll get to this, our histories, but this is an interesting one, and it's a triumph that we've done this for this episode. It was the righting of a wrong, I believe. What else? It was released as part of the classic NES series collection, which was released in Japan in 2004 and the United States in 2004 and Europe in 2005. It was on the Wii Virtual Console in 2007, the Nintendo Wii. And it was on the 3DS Virtual Console in 2012. So I think that covers all of the remakes or the reissues or the re-releases of the game in its original form. But then this started a whole series, which we already mentioned. What are the games in this series?
Yeah, so we had Metroid in 86 for the NES. We had Metroid 2, Return of Samus in 91 on the Game Boy. Super Metroid in 94 for the Super NES. Metroid Fusion 2002 for the Game Boy Advance. Metroid Prime in 2002 for the GameCube, which you mentioned. Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime Pinball. That leads me to Hey Sonic Pinball. Amazing. Metroid
Sidebar.
Prime sidebar for my Sega ass. Metroid Prime Hunters, Metroid Prime 3, Metroid Prime Trilogy, Metroid Other M, Metroid Prime Federation Force, Metroid Samus Returns, Metroid Dread, Metroid Prime 4.
That's it. Metroid Prime 4 should be coming like soon, right?
Yeah, to be announced. Yep.
Yeah, so Metroid Prime 4 was announced in 2017. It's been in development since then, but
Yeah,
the
getting
development was
old stinks.
restarted.
I'm realizing how many of these amazing games I have not had the time to play. So enjoy it while you're young, kids, before that adulting comes about.
Oh my goodness, how right you are. So, just one more thing before we elaborate on that. Metroid, as I said, was a success. It became very popular. It sold 2.73 million units worldwide as of 2004 is the data that we have, which for a game from 1986, solid. That's like
Yeah,
Zelda was 2 million something, right? In
I
its
believe
early
so.
times. It actually ballooned over time because of how much it's been pushed. But considering the original Metroid didn't get that sort of a push, it's still really solid. Interestingly, the aggregate score for this game on Game Rankings, which no longer exists because it was purchased by Metacritic and merged together. But the Game Rankings score was only a 63%.
Ouch.
Yeah.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Meanwhile, Famitsu, which was the famous magazine from Japan, which meant everything back then, rated it 5 out of 5 stars.
You damn right.
Um, who else do we have? CVG gave it an 80% computer and video games.
The nerve of some people.
Nintendo Power gave it a 17.5 out of 20, which is when they broke their scores down into, what was it? Graphics and sound, play control, challenge, and fun factor. No, that was Game Pro. Oh, theme and fun is what they called it. But they did a retrospective on it in 1990 and kind of re-rated it and gave it a 19.5 out of 20. In 2006, Nintendo Power ranked Metroid as its 11th best game on its top 200 games on any Nintendo video game console. And later on, I don't remember who did this, but I think it might have been IGN, a very popular and kind of long talked about best games of all time, put Super Metroid as the best game of all time, just as an aside. Okay, I think that's plenty of history. What about our history? Talking about getting old and missing a lot of games. Did you miss this one as a kid?
I sure did. This one
Me
came out when
too.
I was born, and you know what? The NES was revisited throughout my life, but it wasn't too long lived, for me. I mean, I played it maybe till I was about 7 years old, so maybe from 5 to 7, so a couple years with the NES, and then I got to double check to see when the Genesis came out, and that and the Super Nintendo that had my life. I totally missed this one.
Yeah, me too. I never played Metroid. I never even revisited Metroid. I never came back to it and said, "Oh, it's time to, hit this classic," until now.
Yeah, and I think skipping the original, I didn't really seek out Super Metroid, although I did play it.
Mm.
I think I might have rented it a couple of times. I didn't own it. And then Prime came out on the GameCube, and I played that, and I thought that was sick. the first installment that would have set me on the course of playing and probably owning all of these, especially with the time invested into a game like this. This is definitely a game to the granddaddy per se to get it all started for most people.
Yeah. Yeah, although many will say that after all these years, it does not shine like the others, and we'll decide that for ourselves at the end. But I guess with our history, with our paltry histories of never playing the game covered, we can just get into the game itself and what we've seen now after revisiting it.
So Ed, how does this game start off? What do we see when it
Um,
loads up?
so it's pretty moody right from the start.
Mm.
We get this screen, we get these chimes of music, ding, 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 and it's just it's basically a landscape of some planet with a dark sky and stars, and then it goes into the story, and then you start and you're taken into this world, which is essentially a series of caves. All this really is just a big maze, and it's divided up into a few different zones essentially, and you have to go from one to the next, kind of figuring out how to get there using all these upgrades. So we can immediately get an upgrade in this game, right? Was that?
Yeah, no, you just bang a left.
Yeah.
Once you start, you instinctively think you're going from left to right, but
Mm-hmm.
there's no solid wall to your left. So, if you take a second to just think, hey, before I get started to the right, what's over here? Boom, your first upgrade is actually the ability to, what is it? It's the ability to roll?
It's the morph ball. I think it was called morph ball in the later games. I don't know if it was actually called the morph ball in.
Well, all in all, there were 10 upgrades to be had in this game. So 10 super power-ups.
Yeah. They called the morph ball the Maru Mari
Yeah.
in the original instruction book.
I gotta check and see what that translates to.
Yeah, go for that. I wonder, because I didn't play this as a kid, I wonder if at the time you were expected to just go left to right, start hitting sort of walls, not wall, but like not being able to progress,
Hmm.
and then thinking, "Oh man, what? Maybe I'll just go back," and then stumbling upon that first morph ball upgrade. Because there's a lot of that throughout the game. You go so far, you hit a
Right.
point where you can't go anymore, you go back. Um, a big thing in this game are these vertical shafts, right? Where
Yes.
it's just a huge shaft with platforms and enemies, and on either side there might be doors, and you go, left, right, left, right. You just go through one, go as far as it can take you, come back, try the next one. It is very much a maze.
Hmm.
And it's all about getting from door to door. You shoot the doors to open them. And then later on, you get these upgrades. We can get the missile pretty early, right? That's pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did you? This is funny. I'm sure this is just a me thing. Normally, I read these instruction manuals when I'm going through old games, but I didn't actually read through the book for this one before I started. And I got pissed off. I was so frustrated. I couldn't figure out where to go because I was trying to play it authentically, like as if I had just, I'm a child, I'm just adventuring in this game for the first time. I don't
Yeah.
have Nintendo Power and all their maps. So I
Right.
was trying to figure it out. I was drawing out the map for myself, which is
An
pretty
old
helpful.
schematic.
Yeah.
Did you use graph paper?
No, I used an iPad and an app that lets you just, draw with your finger.
Oh,
Um,
technology.
it was the ugliest map ever.
What I was thinking of drawing a map on was the giant tablecloth paper from Olive Garden, because this map is massive.
Yeah, it
Like
gets to be pretty
they
big.
don't make drawing pads big enough for maps, to do by hand.
Right. So you get to a door that needs to be opened with a missile, and I
Yep.
shot it. It's a different color. It's red. So I shot it with a missile. I'm like, oh, I guess missiles don't do anything. And then I go everywhere else, and I'm like, I don't know how to go forward. Everywhere has a red door. So then I'm there. I'm just pissed off, and I just mash on the button. I mash on the button, and I shoot like 8 missiles at it, and it opens. I'm like, oh, let me check the manual, because I know from experience, like the Zelda manual gives you hints for how to play the game. All the manuals are integral to the experience of the video game. They're part of it. And in
It's
this
such a
day and
lovely
age,
thing.
we don't
Yeah.
have those things. It's all incorporated into the game.
You just get like one advertisement slip and maybe, you know, a code for a free download.
Yeah.
You used to get this beautiful cardboard box and you would unfold it. There would be no tape keeping it, you know, sealed that you'd have to slice open to make sure it was in perfect condition. You would unfold that flap.
Yeah.
You'd have the smell of this brand new cartridge. If you collected cards like baseball cards or basketball cards, or me, like superhero cards and Marvel cards, there was that certain smell. It's better than new car smell. You open that
Yup.
box and it's intoxicating. And you know, for the next few hours, you're just going to be in this brand new world. You and your NES and this brand new cartridge. And then it gets even better. You have like a 40 to 50 page booklet, most of the time full colored, and it tells you everything you should keep your eye out for. I
Yup.
totally missed the book on this one too.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't used to it.
It has all the items, it has all the enemies. It's almost like a gaming magazine that we would get, Like
Yeah,
it's that level
totally.
of interest. Like, oh, look at all this stuff. I could just sit here and read this book.
It-
But in the book, the point is, it says you have to shoot the red doors with a missile 5 times, right there, fully written
Yep.
out. I'm like, oh, oops, gotta read the manual. And then I noticed here's a map of Zebes, which is the planet we're on, and it's all laid out.
I was going to ask you about the correct pronunciation of the planet.
Oh, it could be Zebes. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly. That's something, because I haven't played a lot of the Metroid games, and I haven't played any of the ones that may have had voice acting and may have referenced it. So that you can correct us on that one, guys. Just drop us a note. But I always said Zebes. So it has like a very rudimentary map. It shows the first few corridors and then just kind of a bubble for each of the individual areas, the Brinstar Rocky Zone, and then the Norfair Lava Zone or Fire Zone. But anyway, so we had these other doors that were open with missiles, right? And there actually are eventually a lot of different ways to go forward. But one of the earliest rooms that was opened with a missile, and typically for the rest of the game, if you're opening with a missile, or if you're trying to get into an area with an upgrade, it opens with missiles. So we got, what was one of the earliest ones that you got? The long shot, where you could shoot it across the whole screen.
Oh, yeah, when your blaster actually made it across the whole screen. That was one of the ones that I remember. Yeah.
Oh, that was huge.
Yeah, it was so annoying to start because, I mean, it's the year 2000. You're
Your
a
bullet
space
goes
hunter.
5 feet in front of you.
Yes. Your bullet can only travel 5 helmets away from your arm cannon.
In space, no one can hear your bullet because it doesn't
It doesn't
travel
go
further
anywhere.
than. Yeah, that was an early one that really. So for me, just as an aside,
yeah.
the game was kind of annoying at first to play. I was like, this game isn't really that great. It's like kind of hard. It's not really smooth to play. It feels kind of old. It's one of the older Nintendo games. It has that old feeling.
It's like ground beef if you're going to make like stroganoff or maybe like some chili, and you just take the ground beef and you throw it in the pan by itself. But then you get these 10 upgrades. One's salt, one's pepper, want some herbs, want some spices, cayenne, onions, garlic, boom, bang, bang,
Yeah.
bang, bang. And now you got this killer ground beef for anything. You could put that on anything. I love this game. I'm so happy that we
Yeah.
revisited this game.
Really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the first upgrades. Another one was the bombs that you drop while you're in the morph ball, and
Yeah.
that those become indispensable because one of the other major things that we didn't really mention yet is the sheer volume of secrets, hidden paths in this game.
Oh
Tell
my
me a
goodness.
little
Yeah.
about those.
Yeah. So after my playthrough, I watched an actual playthrough, and I couldn't believe these secrets. Like I I don't know how these folks stumbled upon these things. Some of them you can't even see. Some of them are like behind
Pretty much none
partially
of them you
hidden.
could see.
Yeah, no. Like some you can hit by accident. Others, I mean, require you to get high or to freeze an enemy and jump on top of them and then, go through the roof hatch, so to speak, or
Mm-hmm.
wait for these blocks that you destroy to respawn after, 5, 6 seconds, you know. I mean, yeah, there's so much to be had. Up, down, left, right, like through sand, through boxes, through tunnels, through the bubbles and all these different places that, yeah, there's tons of back end stuff on this thing.
Yeah, I even recall when I first realized that there were going to be a lot of secrets. I was just shooting somewhere, and the bullet, well, it normally stops when it hits the wall, when it hits something, and it kept going through the wall.
Mm,
So I said, I I know that these bullets don't go through walls
yeah.
unless it's a glitch, and that must mean that anything can go through this wall. Maybe I can go through this wall. So I got myself in my little morph ball and used the bomb to bounce up to the level where there was a tunnel, and I tunneled my way across. I have no idea where it was. I can't remember any of the specifics of the layout for this game as far as like, oh, this secret brought you to here, that secret brought you to there, because it's really wild how many there are. But then I just started bombing every floor. I started shooting every wall, shooting every ceiling. It became like kind of obsessive, but also super fun when you did find something. What's the one that you mentioned to me earlier about the bombing and falling down?
Um, hmm. Oh, like one of the passages that you'll take between these different rooms. It's like a screen wide. There are like these rocks that you can break, and I think there was an enemy that I had to like bob and weave or like zoom past while it was like doing its up and down sound wave type of flying pattern. And I was using the I guess what are the drop bombs called when you're in your rolling form in your morph ball? What is their
Mm, bombs. They're just called bombs.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, you use your drop bombs, and I dropped a bomb, and all of a sudden this brick disappears. And okay, now I can make it to this sandy patch, what looks like sand, down below. So I drop down and I sink below into another area that, you would think is just part of the scenery, if you're just casually just, going through the game. But yeah, there's just so many different paths to take, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really cool. It's really cool how they set this game up. I mean, you were working with limited technology back in the day, so you had to figure out these different ways to mix things up. I mean, and with the 10 upgrades that you get, it's almost like an RPG in some type of way, but a non-linear. So it's almost like maybe like a Borderlands before a Borderlands type of deal.
Mm.
I don't know.
I mean, it's like a lot of things before a lot of things because it basically inspired so much.
Yeah.
Um, one there's one interesting place you have to shoot up in one of those narrow passages, and you go up, and then you can't go any further because the jump is too high. So you
Oh,
have
so you
to
have to time it right with the respawning of the block, right? Was that what you were talking about before?
Well, yeah, you do have to do that just to get up into this other area, but then also the once you get above there, the ground sort of respawns, flattens out again, and then the door to the left is really high up. And I think there's a trick where you can let the enemy kind of like go up, shimmy his way up through that hole that you've blasted and freeze him and use him to jump off of so you don't have to get the high jump. But
Mm.
I didn't figure that out. But later on, I got the high jump, which was another upgrade, and came back and jumped up through there again, which was on my map that I had written out for myself so that I could remember where the hell it was. And then you get a really great upgrade is the upgraded suit, which it halves the damage you take, I think, or maybe even less than halves, so you can get
Mm.
hit a lot more. Oh, speaking of that, what's another really indispensable and hidden upgrade that you get a bunch of to make your life greater?
Oh, well, you got the missiles that we spoke about to open the doors that totally destroy enemies, especially the ones that are a real pain in the butt. Your blaster upgrades are super clutch. You have your morph ball, you have your bombs. I mean, the energy tanks, so you can
Yeah.
max out your health. If that's the answer, I say energy tanks for 1,000, Eddie.
Yeah, so those energy tanks, they seem to be really well hidden a lot of the time. Like
Yeah, totally.
super frequently behind a a wall you have to shoot out or a tunnel you have to roll through, something like that. And then you get the energy tank, and that increases your health by 99. By the way, you start this game with 30 health, and you can get up to, I don't know, maybe like 5 energy tanks, and they go up to 99. And then if you die, you go all the way back down to 30. So you can have a really high amount of health or a really paltry amount of health, and it's kind of hard to get health from the enemy drops because a lot of them just give you 5 health each.
Yeah, so you take advantage of their respawns as much
Mm-hmm.
as you possibly can. And anytime that you see little enemies that are easy to beat and they're going to be respawning, that's where you fill up your energy tanks. That's where you refill on, your special shots, your missiles, and yeah, that's where you get prepared for the next room, which could be filled with these killer looking dragonflies from hell. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah.
God, there's so many enemies that were very dangerous.
And
But
looking through this manual too, as I'm scanning through, what I thought was like quicksand or is actually a fire sea.
yeah, so originally the orange one I think is just supposed to be water. But then later on, you get into the fire zone and it's just straight up it's lava, right?
Hmm.
A fire sea is lava to me. It's
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
another way to say that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I was looking at the picture right above, and that is water. Yeah, I was like, okay, it's acid, but it's like yellow. Okay, it's like maybe corrosive.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, that's dirty water.
I
That's
don't think,
bad
does
water.
it hurt you? Does the yellow hurt you also, or just the
I could have
red?
sworn that it did. I'm just used to those. I guess maybe I was just used to those games where you fall into the water and it's just like you got to get out. That's
Yeah.
like it's getting into your suit somehow. You know,
I didn't
I don't
spend a
know.
lot of time in the water in the
No, 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 no.
orange, but I somehow spent a lot of time in the lava. If those areas were hard to maneuver. So yeah, so speaking of that, how would you describe like the areas that you have to platform your way through? Like what physically are you overcoming here?
If we go back to that similar feeling of Ninja Gaiden, this is like a lot of finesse jumping. Some of
Mhm.
these platforms are just as wide as your character is, so it'll feel like Super Mario in that respect as well. you know but as you're making these jumps, you're dodging enemies. You're dodging not so much their fire, at least at the start, but you're dodging their different flying patterns. You're dodging these other ones that and forgive me for the names, they're all in the booklet too, which is awesome. They all have names. But but some of them will be crawling around these rock platforms that you're jumping to and from. So you got to watch your step. You got to time your jumps. And yeah, if you overstep it or something, you can land in some lava or land in some acid water or whatever's going on in the beware of water.
You just reminded me, and while playing, I had this revelation. The jumping in this game reminds me of a game that I was very familiar with in my lifetime. I think because it was yours and I borrowed it from you. I'm almost 100% certain. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. She
Oh
does the
my
same
goodness.
flip, and you
Uh-huh.
can't like land it because she has a mind of her own in the
Yeah.
air. And it like you try to redirect ever so slightly and it goes way more than you want. It's
Uh,
the exact same feeling as
you know where I
Teenage
thought you
Mutant
were
Ninja
going to go with
Turtles.
that one? I thought you were going to talk about Luigi's jump from
Yeah, a
Super
little
Mario
bit. Yeah, a
Brothers
little
2.
bit.
How you hated Luigi
I
so
hate
much.
Luigi. And I
Uh,
am not fond of Samus's flippy jump.
so everybody listening, if you haven't listened to the other episodes that Eddie's done or Eddie and I have done, go check them out. They're definitely worth a listen.
Yeah, I'm a Toad player, man. Toad does not slide an iota. When he lands, it's bam, he sticks the landing, and I like that.
I think that quality is it extends to Mario Kart too, because he don't slide in Mario Kart either. Like he's the tightest driver there is. Him and Yoshi, they
Yeah.
got it going on.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so it's really interesting that these like kind of early games had a little bit of the same like physics feeling to them. So what else? So basically you have to explore this rocky zone first, and that gets you some of your initial upgrades. It gets you
right.
some missiles, gets you a couple of energy tanks, and then you find an elevator, right? And you
The
go
two
down.
beams of light, yes.
And now you're in lava land. And the walls look like bubbles.
Yeah,
Speaking of a
yeah.
living environment, right?
And there,
First
yeah,
you're in
you got
caves.
blue bubble levels, you got pink and purple bubble levels, you got green bubble levels.
Yeah, you got puffy, fluffy walls. You got disease like pustule walls.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, you know. But I mean, no two rooms really look too much the same, which is cool. They kind of they switch it up. I gotta hand it
Yeah.
to them.
Well, I wouldn't agree with no two rooms look the same. I think what they do is they kind of like they switch up the what the walls are constructed of. I think is what you're getting at, right?
Oh yeah. It's not you're never you're never running through like the maybe like in Mario where you're running through something flat on the top and the bottom and it's all about the enemies. Like this is so much a traversal
Oh
game as
yeah,
much
the
as it is
shapes
kill
and
the
stuff.
enemies. That it's all they mix it
But
up.
at the same time, I felt like I was going through a horizontal corridor and I'm like, wait, which one is this? Where am I again?
Oh my god, that was the worst part. That was the worst. Like, yeah, I always was getting lost. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, which vertical climb is this, and which? Because some of them are like, you know what, the equivalent of like a 10-story building.
So tall.
Yeah, ridiculous. And then there's like a door on the left, a door on the right, a door on the right, a door on the left, a door on the right, a door on the left, a door on both.
Yep.
Another pair.
Another really interesting thing they do. So the first area, that Brinstar Rocky Zone, I was
Yeah.
drawing out the map and it was like, oh, okay, this is fine. I drew it out. I had the whole thing beautiful. When you get to the lava zone, it's way more complex. It's bigger and there's a lot more going on. And
Yeah.
it's harder to really keep track. My drawing kind of fell apart, to be honest. I just kind of
I
gave
cheated.
up
I
halfway.
downloaded a map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you would do. That's what anyone would do, I think. But one interesting thing I noticed is that they'll put two, or they did put two of those vertical shafts kind of parallel to each other with some corridors in between. But like the path on that you started in, the first vertical shaft would
Right.
be from like, let's call it the ground floor 0 to like floor 4. And then the one that you get to on the other side goes from like floor 1 to floor 5, and you could blow through the floor of that one and go down to another one that goes from floor 0 to like basement 4. Like they were staggered and it was
If only there
confusing
was like a pause
with a
where there
map.
was a map.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have made this game so much more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Because you wouldn't have to break face and be like, going to your constructed map or going to your PDF. So, okay, where am I? Where am I going? Okay, I gotta go up 5 spaces, over 3 spaces, down another 5. Like, but this game was fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. What are some other things we didn't really talk about? So you can get new upgrades to your beams.
Oh yeah.
We
There's
didn't
like a
go through
freeze
all the
beam, right?
items that actually help you help you make progress. So the ice beam you get somewhat kind of early-ish, and
Yeah.
that it changes your
First, third.
standard beam. So like you lose the ability to just shoot, and now every time you shoot something, you freeze them first, then you have to hit them again, then then they'll unfreeze, then you hit them again. And it's kind of tedious, but also really helpful because there are a lot of enemies on the screen at a time sometimes.
Red light.
Yeah,
Green
it's
light.
like, okay, stop you. I'm going to ignore
Yeah,
you while you're frozen and just
exactly.
handle
I
this
gotta
other
deal with this
thing.
guy over here. Yeah.
And then it'll help you. The freeze beam would help you kind of platform your way up and get to new areas. I think you mentioned that earlier, though, how the freeze beam kind of helps with your platforming because it helps you create new platforms that aren't otherwise there.
Yes.
What else? Then you get the
The
wave
wave
beam
beam.
later.
Yeah.
Much later, you get the wave beam, and that just obliterates fools. For real. The wave beam is like actually, really, really important point that led to my initial frustration was there's no way to hit things that are 1 square high. So in Nintendo graphics,
Oh
everything's
yeah, yeah,
arranged in
yeah.
tiles, right? Everything's like a
Right.
square. Samus is 2 squares high, and the gun shoots in the second square. So anything that's only 1 square high, and there are a lot of enemies of that height, you can't
Yep.
even hit unless you get down into the morph ball, drop the bombs, and do it that way. Later
Yeah.
on with the wave beam, it shoots a beam that kind of does a sine wave, and it'll hit anything that's on the ground, and it is so much fun. So I felt like I was getting this revenge on these little insects that were biting my ankles from the beginning.
Did we mention the fact that you don't get hurt by your own bombs when you're in the morph ball, which is cool because you'll just like bounce yourself around. You can just use it as like a last ditch effort sometimes, which is like defensive play. Just get into the morph ball, drop a bomb, and then boom, 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 boom. Like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's fun.
And also as a first ditch effort to traverse that was actually what I did, what I said about that first tunnel. It was on the second block high, and
Right.
me as the morph ball was only 1 block high. You use the bomb, it bounces you up into the path that you're trying to get to, and you have to use that a lot. I think there's actually I think some people can do a trick, let's call it, to manipulate the physics of the game and just kind of continuously bounce. I was talking to my other friends who were big gamers back then, and one of them said, "You got to use the bounce trick, the morph ball trick." And I was like, "Yeah, I can't do that. I can't time it for anything. I could at most do like a bounce up into the air and catch one more, but I can't go very high because there's this one area." Speaking of these secret areas, there was one area where you drop down from one of those between corridors and you
Right.
go into just a pit and there's just nothing there. And then to get out, you there's no way to get
You
out.
got to learn that skill on the quick because that's the only way you're getting out of that pit.
There's there are the destructible blocks, which are scattered throughout the game and used to great effect to help you in your vertical traversal. And in this
Right.
case, they're just lining the walls, but every like five, there's a solid block. So you can't go through it. So you have to like shoot out a bunch, get your space there, and they respawn. So when they respawn, you get like bumps to the side. So you have to shoot out a bunch where you're standing, jump out into the side and shoot back toward the wall to knock out the ones that are above the solid block, land, then jump again up into the space you just created. And that's how I got out of that pit. I think the other option was have the freeze beam and freeze the enemies that are flying around in there, but I didn't have the freeze beam.
Mm.
Because the game is open ended, which is
Yeah.
huge for a game of 1986, to just be non linear. So amazing. That's probably why it was considered so great, or one of the reasons. The freedom, the exploration. The game is so much about exploration.
Yeah. For real. Then you have the screw attack, right? Which basically makes you super strong, and you spin when you jump, and you can attack at the same time.
Yeah, you kind of get like a little invincible by the end with all these
Yeah.
things if you find them all.
Yep.
Because I don't think you need the screw attack to finish the game.
No. No, you
But
don't
you
have to get
need like the ice beam to finish the game.
the high jump is totally clutch, so you can vary
I
your
think you
jump.
need the high jump to
Yeah.
progress.
Varia is clutch. This way you have your damage taken.
Yeah, that's not necessary, but it's kind of
Helps.
necessary.
It certainly will help.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't beat the game without it. I can't even imagine.
Oh my god. The energy tanks, the missile rockets we talked about. And you can actually carry a maximum of 255.
Right. There's so many missile upgrades.
Oh, who can carry 250? Samus can.
Yeah.
And it's a woman, damn it. It's a lady.
Yeah, so at the end, I ended up with like maybe 190, 185 or something like that.
You were harvesting them.
I was getting a bunch, but I definitely did not get them all because that map, like I said, it gets really big.
Yeah.
So what else do we have? We have mini bosses, right? We have the two mini bosses.
Yeah, what are their names, Ed?
Well, one is Ridley Scott. Ridley. And the other is, who's the other one?
Kraid. Yeah. And he looks kind of like Bowser. If Bowser and some, like a rhinoceros kind of, yeah. Bowser, that jerk. If he and a rhinoceros crossed paths, that's what that dude looks like.
Cross
also
swords.
Cross swords. That's so good.
Yeah.
No, he also reminds me of I think Slash, who was a character from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who was like the bad tortoise.
Oh, yeah. Well, also Toka.
That's from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Yeah.
Right, the ooze. Yeah, in the cartoon and in the comics, there was I think he was a tortoise, and he was like a bad Raphael. Like, he was on like that level. Like if Raphael was a bad guy.
Raphael kind of was a bad guy.
He was a nice
He was
guy.
tormented.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was like Wreck-It Ralph. You ever seen Wreck-It Ralph, Ed?
Yeah.
Even Zangief says, just because you're a bad guy doesn't mean you're a bad guy.
That's very true. That is very true. So we had those two bosses. Interestingly, Kraid is supposed to be like the boss of the Rocky Zone, Brinstar, but he's not even over there. He's like off in the very beginning of the game in an area where you drop down and go hunting for him. Well, actually, this is interesting. I guess that we didn't make it clear is that not only are the two zones, the Rocky Zone, Brinstar, and the Fire Zone, Norfair, there are the mini boss hideouts, which are not just like a room that you find the mini boss in. It's a whole other area that is a whole other maze. So there's really kind of five areas, because there's those two, the two mini boss areas, and then kind of like the final area,
Yeah.
which is called Torian, which is where you find the Metroids eventually. But you need to beat the two mini bosses before you can get to the final area. But let's talk, what are the bosses like?
Well, I mean, I'll take Kraid, and you can describe Ridley. Kraid reminds me of just to parallel it and compare it to things that our listeners might know. He looks like Bowser. He throws these boomerang looking things that look like, the spines that are coming out of his back, or maybe the horns that are coming out of his cranial area and his chest and stomach. And he's just winging these things. And he's got other projectiles. And you just got
a barrage.
Yeah, a total barrage. And you just got to blow him up. Like everybody, the regular enemies, you could take them out with your blaster for the most part, no prob. But these bosses, you got to blow them up.
They take roughly 1 million hits.
On average, yeah.
Yeah. I went in there and I just started, my strategy was button mash.
Yeah, you have to. That's how we did it back in the day.
With Kraid, I happened to have the ice beam at the time.
Oh, okay.
So you can freeze his projectiles. You can freeze his spiny boomerang flings, and you can freeze his darts. But I think you can only freeze you can freeze all of them. But I tended to only freeze one at a time. But it was kind of enough to as long as you had this one sort of safe lane to live in, and then just light him up with missiles. And he gives you an energy tank. And then Ridley's shooting this sort of arc of little orbs, and there's a trick to it which I wasn't really successful at. You can kind of get right up on Ridley and all the shots will go over you, but for some reason I had a lot of trouble and kept getting knocked back. I couldn't find the spot. But Ridley looks kind of like a it's supposed to be kind of a dragon, but it looks more like a zygote. like an undeveloped fetus. It's like a dragon fetus, basically, that you're fighting.
Yeah, okay. If you had an X-ray and you could see into the dragon egg, maybe a half cycle before it hatches. That's what he kind of looks like. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So you
like a xenomorph with wings, like a Pokemon xenomorph. If you guys know Alien,
a Pokemonized,
right? Yeah, Pokemonized xenomorph with wings.
Yeah.
Mixed with a little bit of that baddie that shoots eggs out of his face in Super Mario 2. I think that's probably gonna be the best description. Yeah. What is his name?
Birdo.
And
oh my god, the area around Ridley had all those bouncing orbs that just bounce off the sides, off of all the walls.
Oh, and those wasps that would just zoom up and then zoom at you.
Oh yeah, like the same version of the earlier enemies, but stronger, faster. Well, one thing about those is those were the ones that I would kind of use, like we talked about earlier, to harvest resources.
Oh yeah.
But when you weren't doing that, when you weren't in control of the situation and they were just part of the path that you were trying to get through,
part of the problem,
they were the problem.
They would mess your whole day up.
Because they shoot up out of the ground, out of these pipes, and they will go exactly as high as you go on the screen.
Yep.
And once they're in line with you, once they target in on you, they come for you. And they just always seem to hit me.
Yeah.
Because you can't jump at them to try to jump over, because they'll just continue to go up and you'll just hit them.
And some of them will just take shots. So if you're not prepared to shoot
Yeah.
a missile rocket at them or whatever, and you're trying to use your blaster, nuh-uh, they're coming straight for your face.
You've got to
they're
shoot
gonna
them.
dive at you like a tight end.
Or if you're
Or
like going the other direction, just run away. But mostly
yeah, true.
you have to actively engage.
Oh yeah, no half stepping here.
Yeah. What are some other enemies that were notable, that were really interesting? So
Let's
I'm gonna look
see.
at the instruction manual here. One for me
Yeah,
was these
the Rio,
which
they
one
were
is
annoying.
that? What are
They
they?
seem to like they seem to change levels on you early on in the game. Like you
Oh,
encountered
those
the
are the
Rio.
sine wave flying ones, right? They kind of go, they wave their way across. They look like little
No, no, no. The Rios, they look like the if a crab and a dragonfly crossed. Like they would come down from the ceiling
oh
and they would
yeah, and
come
then
down to the
track
floor and they
you.
would change levels on. Yeah, they would track you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of enemies that track you. Also
Mm-hmm.
they're called the scree. They're like little bat type enemies that come.
Mm-hmm.
They're like a cross between a bat and a drill. They just like come off the ceiling,
Yep.
and they kind of home in on you left to right and try to land right on your head. And if you are ready, you just shoot up, because you can shoot in three directions in this game: left, right,
You
and up.
mash that button, you do.
Yeah, you'll
You got
kill
to
them.
get them a few times. Yep.
But if you don't get them soon enough, they'll drill right into you, and they hit. Everything in this game really homes in well.
Yep.
The ones that became a real nuisance for me was like a there's kind of like a family of enemies, like the game has like a few of these like sort of families of enemies that have similar characteristics but just change as the game goes on. And the
Right.
ones I'm talking about are, they're like 2 tiles wide graphically, and they'll go up and down and left and right. Like the one's called the side hopper, and
I
then
knew you were going to say that one. Yep.
later on you get the Desgiga. They just kind of, they're always coming toward you and going up and down, so they're both an aggressive enemy and a environmental hazard, and they take a lot of hits.
Oh
You have to use
yeah,
a
the
missile on
Garudas
them.
too. The Garudas. If you go down to page 36 in the manual there, those will house you. I mean, those are like super duper what I mentioned, and they've harnessed the power of fire because it looks like they have fire rockets coming out of their feet.
Yeah, a lot of the enemies are just something you have to figure out how to deal with,
Yep.
and execute it very well. We had the luxury of playing in the era of save states, but if I were playing on the original NES, I would be starting with 30 health a lot and having to
Mm,
build up from there. In our case, in my case anyway, I was able to, hit the save state, and if I died later, just load it back up from where I was. Or, I didn't really do the save scumming like I did in Ninja Gaiden for some of those things where I was saving constantly to finish
yeah.
it. But like there were certainly moments where my day would have been ruined had I not had that ability.
uh,
And actually,
uh,
that reminds me of this other aspect of the game, is we talked about the elevator between areas. So when you go between like the rocky zone and the lava zone, or the lava zone and Ridley's area, or the starting area and Kraid's area, you take an elevator. And anytime you die within a given area, you start where the elevator drops you off, which is really nice that you don't have to start at the very beginning of the game. But it's also kind of annoying to go back to the beginning of the game. So one of the things that I would do is die on purpose just to go back to the elevator, and then get on the elevator, go up the elevator, go to the first area I could get to, and then die on purpose there and go back to the beginning elevator of that one. This was particularly when I beat Ridley, and I'm like, okay, now the book says I have to go all the way to the very first area where this bridge is, because once you beat the two mini bosses, their two little statues show up on this bridge. You go across, and then you can go to the final area. So I'm like, Jesus, it's gonna take me 2 hours just to get back to the beginning of the game. So I died. I took the deaths, and then I just worked my way up, getting health. Kind of just cheesing my way, grinding for the health pickups. Which I don't know. I don't know how I would have done it as a kid. Oh, I would have been dying constantly as a kid because
Game Genie.
Yeah.
If you don't know, there was this add-on, this third-party device called a Game Genie. It was basically like a jockstrap for your. It was basically a jockstrap for your cartridge. It was a mixture of like vinyl and metal, some type of like
You
tin
had one, didn't
aluminum
you?
combo. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Damn right I did. A lot of these games when I was younger, you have a few years on me, Ed. I was younger, and some of these games made me cry, like Ninja Gaiden. Let's not go there with me again. So I had a Game Genie, and yeah, so you would throw this jockstrap on the cartridge, and it would load up first the Game Genie, and then you had this book that had all of the codes for all of the games, and then you would just enter them in, and it made the games a whole lot more enjoyable if you had to use it. I always attempted the game without the Game Genie, but some games were either super duper fun, like playing Grand Theft Auto with all of the cheats enabled. You know how we all did that with Grand Theft Auto 3.
Yeah.
And some games were just impossible without it.
Either impossible or it cost you like a year of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
One or the other.
Yep, that's the truth.
When we had that time to spend, right?
Good times.
So we beat the two bosses, right? Let me give you
and
another.
And then you finally get to the Metroid, right?
The Metroid that you can't beat and die automatically, because I didn't know you had to have the ice beam, and I still had my wave beam that I was in love with. I was like, yeah, wave beam, killing everything, killing all these crawling dicks, and just loving it, just lighting stuff up. Oh, there was another upgrade. Oh no, the wave beam itself went through walls. That was cool. And I loved it. I went all the way back. I'm like, okay, gonna go fight the boss. I get there. Then there are Metroids. They latch onto you. You can't get them off. If you shoot them, it does nothing. If you missile them, it does nothing. So I'm like, what? So back to the instruction manual. You need the ice beam again. Which is just so annoying. Like, you get the ice beam first. You get the wave beam in a much later part of the game. And then who expects to have to get the early thing again? I mean, I guess the manual says it. Yeah. I'm reading here right in the manual. This protoplasm in suspended animation was discovered on the planet SR-388. Sounds like a motorcycle. It clings onto Samus's body and sucks his energy. It can't be destroyed directly with the normal beam. Freeze it with the ice beam, and then fire 5 missile blasts at it. So yeah, it says it right there.
Yep.
But of course, I forgot. So I went to this bridge, I shot these two statues of the two bosses, went down this elevator, and promptly got killed over and over. I was like, okay, I'm missing something here. I'm totally At first, I was like, oh, you can't kill them. All you have to do in this part is run and avoid them.
Avoid them.
No,
That's exactly what I did. Yeah.
it's not possible. Were you able to, or you? Because like once you got down past like 4 of them, it just became too much.
Yeah. No, I had to pause it, take a look at a walkthrough, and then figure that out. Because again,
or the manual.
Yeah, no booklet. I've totally forgot about the manual on this one.
Yeah. So then this area with the ice beam, it's more trivial because you freeze them, you shoot them a few times with the missiles, and you go ahead. But it's a real drain on missiles. If you didn't get your missile upgrades, you're not beating the game. So you have to have like nearly 200 missiles going into this because you're spending them on these Metroids. They give them back to you too, but still, you're going to need them for the Metroids and for the final boss, which is Mother Brain.
The mechanical Mother Brain, yeah.
So tell us about the Mother Brain gauntlet. whatever you call that boss fight.
Oh my God! So the first things that you got to take out, you got to make sure you're not getting hit by all of the stuff that Mother Brain's self-defense system is shooting at you. I mean, there are turrets, there are like ring beams that are bouncing around, there are other projectiles that are floating at you. You got to destroy these Zebetites, which are, it makes me feel like they're like feeding tubes of some sort.
It's a life support system.
Life support system, yeah, that is keeping the Mother Brain alive.
Missiles only, by the way. Only missiles on that. Just like the Metroids, only missiles.
Uh-huh. You got to get through, what was it, 3 or 4 of them?
Oh, God, I don't...
And then...
It's at least 4, possibly 5. And if you don't do it fast enough, they grow right back. And they grow back fast. You have to be hitting them pretty consistently.
Yep.
And it's hard.
So you're either taking the hits and dealing with that, it's a trade. Or you're doing it with super finesse and you can get all the shots off without it growing back and saving your missiles for the Mother Brain when you get to her.
Yeah.
It's just off to the left.
But the thing also is like, even if you say, okay, I'm just going to take the hits, beyond that first platform... So what it is you come into the room from the right side, and it's a series of like platform, then this vertical thing that you have to blow out, turrets above you. Then the next little section has a platform, but you can fall off of it. And that's what I'm getting at is if you try to just take the hits, it'll knock you off the platform. So now you can't like shoot the missile on the right level, and then it starts to grow back. So you kind of have to dodge, and the thing's growing back, and you're getting shot.
You got to get up there and try to stay up on there and fire off at least 3 shots. I mean, those turrets are no joke because they will buck you.
Yeah.
But, you get in there. You just do a little duck, dodge, dip, dive, dodge.
So you're going through, and there's like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 sections of this. What something like that, but you're going through a bunch, and then in the very end, all the way on the left, is a little capsule, like a glass bottle, like a glass jar with just a stationary Mother Brain in it, which looks like a sea urchin or a heart. Yeah, not a sea urchin. I meant a nautilus. Looks like a spiky Legion of Doom nautilus. Just sitting there.
Well, take a look at it as if it was a character, and that blinky thing was like an eye, and then you got lips, and you got like a chin
it's just
strap
a face
on the side. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to light this thing up. You hit it once with a missile. It blows a gap in this glass fishbowl, and then you just have to light it up with more missiles while you're getting shot by all the same stuff you've been getting shot with. And then it's like, oh, there's a timer, the whole place is gonna blow, which is where X-Men got it from, which is where everything got it from, because this, I'm almost 100% certain this is the first game to do something like this.
Oh, the self-destruct.
It's got this self-destruct with the timer, and then you're jumping up a shaft with like 1 pixel wide platforms to jump on, and they're arranged in the most haphazard little music box pattern. Like when you get a music box and it has the little nubs on it as the wheels are spinning to make music.
Yeah,
it just looks like that, or like a rock band or a Guitar Hero.
They give you ample time. You take your time, you plan your jumps,
but you can
get
fall
out of there
all the way down.
Yeah,
And then you have to start over. Luckily, we didn't have that problem because save states.
Great, you fulfilled your mission.
Yeah, so you get to the end and you're just standing on the surface of the planet, and then depending on how fast you did it, you get different endings. I'll do the first few. You could finish out. So the first one is if you take a really long time, you're almost like looking away in shame in your full suit. Second one, you're standing there just triumphant. It's if you beat it in like 5 to 6 hours or something. You're just looking forward at the camera, let's call it, at the screen. Then what I got it in was 3 to 5. You get the big reveal. Helmet's off. It's straight up, oh God, Hollywood, that actress. It's not like they modeled it literally after Kim Basinger. So you have this woman and you're like, oh my God, it's a girl. I can't believe it's a girl. And then what? After that, if you do it in 3 to 5, what do we get?
You get like the leotard.
Yeah.
You get it in like she's wearing like a pink, unitard with like the long sleeves like they wear, in the Olympics or whatever. And you could see, that
very womanly.
It's cold in space, and she's very much a strong, well put together woman. And she's got brown hair, and she's waving all nice, like, "Hey, it was just me, the android, kicking all the aliens'
greatest space
asses.
hunter in the history of ever.
It ain't nothing. I'm gonna go home and take care of my kids and make sure that everything's taken care of because I'm a badass."
I love that she waves.
Yeah, and it's just like so sweet.
Hi.
Like, hey.
And then if you beat it in the fastest time, she's in a bikini. Which there is a code for the game, Justin Bailey, which lets you play with her in the bikini.
Hey, Lara Croft, who's your auntie? Samus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Justin Bailey also gave you nearly all the power-ups, and it says it put her in the leotard, not the bikini.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't know for sure because I didn't do all that. But yeah, that's the game. What did you think?
I loved it, man. I'm so glad I can say that game had been played. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to call myself a gamer having not played that or doing the damn thing and playing that game because so many of the games came out and it was just like, Metroid, I didn't know any better, but, and this, this is what started it all. So yeah, I'm glad I got a chance to play it.
Me too. Especially, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but I was a huge Metroid Prime fan when it first came out on the GameCube. I was like, oh my God, this game is one of the best games.
Yeah, that game was so awesome.
But I didn't have the history. So going back was really good. And actually, I did not take to it immediately. I was, I was frustrated. I said that before. And I thought to myself, oh, this is going to be like, okay, I see where they went with this. This was a good foundation, whatever, but not for me. Mm-hmm. But then as the game progressed, there was that real good feeling of progression, of growth, of getting better, of going from weak to very strong. Something they did.
So if I were like 40 to 45 instead of 35, and I had like that special monthly issue of Nintendo Power, or what were the guides called? What was the
Player's Guide?
name? No, what was that third party brand that did a lot of the
There were a
guidebooks.
few. There was Prima. There was Brady Games.
Yeah, Prima's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, Brady Games too. Yep, with like a probably like a a Playmate centerfold that like would open up into the giant map.
Okay, of the map,
You know.
not of Samus in her bikini.
Although I'm sure you can find one on Amazon, boys and girls.
Yeah, I feel like the map is more useful.
Well, but yeah, true.
So yeah, after going through it and seeing how the game progressed, there was a big realization there for me, like, oh, this was really good for 1986. I get it.
Yep.
I get it. Now I get it, folks. Retro gamers, I get it. Do you get it? You probably got it 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Jesus, almost 40 years ago. Wow. Yeah.
What a game.
Good one. I recommend it. And then, of course, Super Metroid.
Oh, this is also true.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Speaking
let's fill
of,
them in. Let's see. Yeah, what are we thinking about doing next time around, Ed?
Well, I promised it last time. I promised we would go up a generation, and that
Yes, you
we
did.
are to the console that had a wholly unique new game smell when it came out. I distinctly remember the change in aroma of the console box and the game boxes, which you mentioned before.
Are you going there? Are we taking a 2-generational step to get to where are we going, Ed?
We're diving.
I'm so excited.
We're diving into the third dimension, and we're playing a game on the Nintendo 64. And that game is going to be not a Nintendo developed game, but a revisit to Rare.
Da 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 da.
Da, 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 da.
Oh man.
Yep. We're going to play GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64.
I cannot wait. I am going to a flea market because you can find some of these consoles and you don't have to spend an arm and a leg for them.
Not like eBay.
Oh, yeah, no, not like eBay at all. And if you happen to stumble upon a semi-clear, semi-transparent, lemon lime green Nintendo 64 controller, that might have belonged to me. That was my favorite controller growing up. That was the one that I used to wrap very carefully in an X formation. We'll talk about that in the next episode, I'm sure. An X formation around the 64, 3-handled controller. And yeah, we might even talk about slappers only. Whoo, I'm so excited.
License to
Are
Kill.
you excited? Yes.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Golden Gun. Oh my God.
All right. But until then, you can check us out. Anchor.fm/smashingbricks, but you're already listening, so you probably know where to find us. Any of your favorite podcast listening platforms. We're on Instagram, that's Smashing Bricks, and Twitter, not as frequently at smashing_bricks. And Anthony Gnagnarelli, where are you?
I am at Asylum in Arkham. That's where you can find me on Instagram.
Everywhere.
You can find me on Twitter. On Facebook, I'm simply me, Anthony Gnagnarelli Jr. That's ANTHONYGNAGNARELLI with a JR at the end. So hit me up. I would love to connect with you guys. I'm going to be assisting Eddie in our marketing effort to reach more of you guys out there, and I appreciate you guys so much. This is so much fun, and I can't wait till the next episode, Ed.
Awesome. Yeah, and everybody, drop us a line anywhere, talk to Anthony, talk to the main account, leave us a voice note on Anchor, and we'll put your voice, your literal voice, here with us on the podcast. If you have anything to say, particularly about Metroid, which we just played, GoldenEye, which is coming up, or even any of the older games that we've gone through in the first 6 episodes.
Yeah, and any suggestions for the future? Give us a like,
Yeah.
throw us a comment, throw us a share. You know what they say. And yeah,
So that's it, my friends. Thank you, Anthony.
my pleasure as always, Ed. Thank you for having me.
And until next time, may the nostalgia be with you.